position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last length. Melanie
Right the first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Loughlin, and Hoyt
from Archibald. Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then he's followed down right by. He's beginning to run. He's drifting off the true line. He's fire, and this must be home. Surrenders a gun to win his fourth Betfair chase, and Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
Okay, so good morning, good evening, and hello to everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of Tailed Off. This is episode number 14 of the No Holes Barred podcast that dives headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. Now, you'll probably see there's a bit of a different setup this week, as we don't have our racing idiot, Matthew, unfortunately with us. He is otherwise indisposed. So we wish him a speedy recovery and hopefully he'll be back in time for next week. But I am joined by our major man, Mr. Elliot Mullins. So hello, El, how are you getting on?
All good, mate, all good. The show must go on, as they say in show business.
Exactly that, we've got to give the listeners what they want, haven't we? So we will do our best to get this out there as quick as possible for everyone. But in terms of what we're going to go through today, we've got a quick update on the Trainers in Form. There should be an update on Call Out, El's horse. Some interesting and exciting news hopefully there. Got some Stewards enquiry info, some news as well, and then the big piece obviously is on the preview for the showdown between Mr. Willie Mullins and Mr. Dan Skelton, which is taking place at Sandown in the Jumps finale. So very exciting times. El, do we want to start off with the Trainers in Form P&L?
Yeah, so I had a few selections come up the last week. As I say, we've said this all the way along, it's kind of peaks and troughs. There is no rhythm to when we're going to have selections. Sometimes you might have none or one in a week, sometimes you might have a handful. So we've had about 4 or 5 in the last week. And a couple have gone close. Thankfully, we've had a couple of places, so we are a couple of quid better than we were last week, but haven't managed to land a winner for a few yet. So we've improved from where we were week on week, so we're £64.48 up. But I will give a shout out to the winning tip of the Scottish Sprint Cup that we gave last week, American Affair at 5-1. So that's 2 weeks in a row now. We've had one of the big Saturday races winners.
Covered.
Worth watching out for them as well as our Trainers in Form tips.
Absolutely. I think I've had 3 or 4 people that have kind of spoken to and they've said, Trainers in Form, what's going on? And exactly as you said, it's peaks and troughs. Like, you're never going to get winners every single time, but you just got to keep the faith. Keep the faith, it all comes good, as we've proven, with over £64 of profit to £1.
That is shocking if people are not happy when it's £64.48 up.
You just can't get the staff, can you, with this stuff? You can't get the staff. So, but it's good to hear. So fingers crossed we'll get back a few more with Sandown this weekend as well. Might not be Trainers in Form, but we'll hopefully find some winners for everyone. So the next call out. Oh, give us the latest. What's going on? Exciting news?
Yeah, well, hopefully if you figure out how to post the video, we will have a video. If not,
good luck.
Imagine
running. No idea.
Yeah, I've had quite a few updates this week from Jack, which has been good to see. He's done another fast piece of work, and then he did another canter this week against a few different horses, and it sounded like he was still having a bit of a blow from his gallop this week, so that kind of basically tells Jack whether he's fit or not, and I think just still having a blow means it's kind of he's getting closer, but he's still not 100% fit. So it's quite interesting to sort of hear how they can gauge it pretty accurately in terms of how they recover after their exercise. But yeah, he's really pleased with how he's training. He posted, anyone that follows Jack Morland Racing on Instagram will see a lovely little reel he posted of him making a nice little bed for himself, ready to have a little roll, which was quite fun. So yeah, it seems like he's in good spirits, and we're getting very close to a run. So he has actually now been entered into his first race for us, which is at Yarmouth next Thursday, over a mile, which will be interesting. And I think it all depends on his next piece of work early next week as to if he tells Jack he's fit enough. Because obviously you don't want to send a horse there. You don't want to send a horse there 100%, but you don't want to send it there 60%, so somewhere in the middle. So yeah, he's had his first entry, and he could be running as early as next week, which is great news.
Is it the first of May? Was it?
Yeah, 1st of May is the Thursday, isn't it? So
Yeah.
That's over at Great Yarmouth, which you know exactly where it is on the map.
Oh yeah, Cornwall. Eat your heart out. Fantastic. Well, fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll when we come around to next week's podcast, we'll either know if he's run or if he's then entered somewhere else. But fingers crossed. It sounds. And having seen the videos and things, I mean, he looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really fit. So fingers crossed he can do the business at some point. But yeah, all exciting times ahead for Call Out. And I will try and post the video of the piece of work that he did. So we'll see how that goes.
Watch your space.
Yeah, exactly that. Could be waiting a while. Okay, Stewards inquiry. Oh, we've got one in here for you. If you want to go straight into that, so it's around the arena company racing.
Yeah, the old bing bong. You have to try and figure out how to do that video as well.
Yeah, I might have to just put my voice over a bing bong and just hope for the best. Stewards inquiry, Stewards inquiry.
Yeah, so I suppose this is quite an interesting nuanced thing that's come to light in recent weeks. Arena Racing Company, who are kind of more commonly known as ARC Group, they are probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, racehorse ownership group in the UK. The other biggest one being the Jockey Club, who run kind of Sandown, Cheltenham, Aintree, some of the real big, nice courses, if you like. And ARC tend to have your Wolverhamptons, Southall, Lingfield, Brighton. I think they've got Yarmouth as well, funnily enough. Tend to be your entry level kind of tracks in terms of experience and what's on offer there. So the Jockey Club is run as a kind of non-for-profit. I mean, it isn't, obviously, they do cream it, but it's supposed to be anything they make once they've taken all the dividends. It's supposed to be invested back into racing. It's supposed to be set up to secure the future of horse racing, which is why they bought Cheltenham in the first place. Whereas Arena Racing Company are owned by two kind of very shrewd businessmen, the Reuben brothers. They're in the UK rich list every year comes out. So they run it like a business, so it's very lean. So they're all about cost, and they try and squeeze every penny that they can, which is why if you go to any of their race courses, you wouldn't even get a Guinness for a long time because they thought it was too costly to produce to put on. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with. They like to sort of bend every loop. I don't want to say bend every loophole. That might be a bit unfair. It might be get me into trouble, litigation.
Say it.
I don't want to get libelled. But, they're fucking dodgy. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. There we go. Just come out and say it. Say how it is.
Yeah, so someone on Twitter who actually used to run the one of the ownership, it was either the syndicate group or the ownership group a few years back. He posted something which I spotted, Sam Hoskins, and he noticed that they've had a few horses in an ownership group called, bearing in mind they're called Arena Racing Company. This ownership group are called Amphitheatre Racing, which is right. So it's not an arena, it's an amphitheatre. So it's blatantly them, and when people did some digging, it's their head office, their kind of registered office is the same as the head office as ARC, so quite clearly it's the same people.
Convenient.
The reason why that's interesting is because what's happened recently, so a lot of their courses are all weather, low grade racing, and all they care about is the more racing they put on, every additional race they get more revenue. So that's how kind of race courses are funded, the levy. So all the bets that are put on horse racing, that's a percentage of those bets are given back to racing, but the majority of which goes to the race courses who put on the show, if you like. So the more racing that they have, no matter how good quality it is, no matter how competitive it is, the more of a percentage they'll yield. And if you ever look at like a Lingfield or Wolverhampton or Southall card especially, you can see like 8, 9 and even sometimes 10 race cards, which if anyone's been racing, it's 6 or 7. So when you go in 10, you're thinking, how's that happened? But what they want to happen is some races that have got enough runners declared, they can split the race into 2 divisions. So on the all-weather, that was lowered in the last few years. So 16 declarations qualifies for a race to be split into 2 divisions, which seems mental because as a maximum, you're going to be left with 2 8-runner races, which is not very fun to bet on because one of them is bound to be a non-runner. Yeah. Whereas if you had a 16-runner race, it's much more competitive. So they've clearly in the last few years, so this has been going since 2022, but it's come to prominence in the last year really. They've built up their own horses that they own. They're trained by Scott Dixon, who if you're wondering where he trains, he actually trains, doesn't have like his own gallops or anything. He trains at Southall and Wolverhampton. So he literally is living on those courses, training the horses on the courses. So they're called track horses, which are owned by Arena Racing Company. All the horses are trained with him. And there's this one horse which will, if you can figure out how to put the photos up, you'll put the photo up, called Rahilla, and that will show you the colours, the light blue with the red disc. That horse has had 3 times this year already. It's been a non-runner, and every single time that it was declared for a race, it was enough for the race to split into 2 divisions at one of their courses, which means an extra race, which means they get extra money. And it used to not, this didn't used to be a rule, but the only way you can be a non-runner is if there's like a significant reason, like the go-in has changed, for example, or the horse has had an injury, obviously. But you're allowed to pull your horse out a maximum of 3 times in a year, and that's called a self-certification. So you have it's called a vet certification, because obviously a vet has to do it, but you're obviously going to have your own vet that you'll say, just give me a reason why this can't run today, and I can put it out. But you can only do that 3 times, so they've used that 3 times already since the start of the year. So it just absolutely reeks for me. And they have been interviewed about this, and they've like vehemently denied it. They said, we don't have any control where the horses run. But I looked, and they've had 14 runners in the last 14 days, and every single one has run at one of their tracks. And I couldn't actually find one that had run somewhere else. So that's my Stewards enquiry for the week, because basically they've decided to buy their own horses, run them at their own tracks, not for the good of racing, but to actually benefit their own pockets, which doesn't sit well.
It'd be interesting to see, like you said, the Rahilla has been pulled out 3 times, so he's kind of used up his jokers for the year.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see now the other 13 or however many horses they have.
They've got 10 individual horses.
Pulled out now. Yeah, so if they of those other 9, how many of them are going to start getting pulled out of races as a result? Because obviously they can do that another 27 times then across the course of the 9 of them.
Yeah.
So
it's just quite a unique.
It reeks.
It's quite a unique situation, because you would think of owners and racecourses as 2 completely different things, but in this instance they're the same thing, and they're using horses not because they were like, oh, we really want to have this horse to be successful. We're just using it as like chess pieces, and we'll move them around the courses depending on how many runners we need to make money.
Yeah.
So,
Man, and I assume Scott Dixon isn't getting, like, obviously because he's training the horses at their locations at Southall and Wolverhampton. So it's not like he gets any fee. He's charging them fees for it either. If anything, they're probably charging him.
Well, exactly, and he has had a quote in the Racing Post saying that they don't tell him where to run the horses. But I'm sorry, you're employed to train the horses by these people, and you basically tenant their facilities to train the horses. So I'm like, I think you're going to probably listen to where they want to run.
Exactly.
Imagine if you sent it to like
put you out.
Catterick or somewhere.
Yeah.
They'd be like, hang on
a minute. Yeah, it's going to say. I mean,
Well,
imagine if
Wolver.
they didn't. They just pull the horses out from him and go to someone who is willing to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's mad. I mean, that's a hell of a thing. So it'd be interesting to see, like, try and follow this maybe across the course of the season, just to see what happens. But yeah, no, really, really interesting on that. So, and I will try and get the picture up of Rahilla so everyone can see that. So fingers crossed if I can get it working. Okay, on to news then. So as we've already said, we've got the finale of the jump season on tomorrow at Sandown. So we've obviously got the UK Jumpers trainers title between Mullins and Mr. Skelton. So, Elle, talk us through what's the latest on the prize money side and things.
yeah, well, since we last recorded, it's been an absolute humdinger. Mullins has thrown the kitchen sink and more at it, and to be fair, has hit the target more times than he's missed. With crucially the key races, the most valuable races. Yeah. Last weekend we said he had so many entries at Plumpton, where, to be fair to Plumpton, they put on a good bit of money for what was used to be just quite an ordinary card with the Sussex Champion Hurdle and Champion Chase, but he managed to plunder the biggest race of the meeting, the Sussex Champion Hurdle with Absurd, which we duly scooped up on.
Yeah.
Harry Cobden absolutely.
Must have.
And then he even sent horses to Perth on Wednesday, like he's really going for it. And then he managed to win the 2 listed races there, and he cut the deficit down to under 25k. But obviously, I think Dan, training and being based here has helped him sort of recover a bit since that last couple of hits from Mullins. And at the start of today, he was 57.7k back in front. Well, he has been in front, but kind of further in front. And then you've told me just before we came on air that he's had another winner somewhere today, so he's maybe gone over 60k in front, but it's just setting it up for a big grandstand finish at Sandown tomorrow. Willie has 21 runners, Dan has just the 9. So on a numbers basis, and he's got half the field in the big race, which we'll talk about in a bit. You just think he's a sitting duck, isn't he, really?
He is. So he's just ready to be shot at, isn't he? Unfortunately, poor Dan. You go through the whole season thinking, "I've got this on toast." Mullins is like, "Nah, done it once, not that fast." Clears up at Aintree to win, 840k, straight back into the fray with that. And all of a sudden, he's just throwing the kitchen sink and everything. It's probably a telling story, the fact that Paul Townend was riding at, was it Perth the other day when he obviously won the 2 listed races?
Wednesday,
so, it told a story in itself, the fact he won the 2 big races, lucrative races there. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to see Dan do it because I think he deserves it, but the firepower that Willie's got going to Sandown, as we'll talk about shortly, is quite scary. We'll see what happens. Good luck to Dan Skelton, I guess.
Ta-ta, farewell.
Yeah, ta-ta, farewell. And then the other piece of news, Nico de Boinville's picked up a pretty bad injury by all accounts, it would seem.
Yeah, so in that same weekend over Easter at Plumpton, he had I remember watching the race, he had a crash and fall in the Sussex Champion Chase, literally at the first fence aboard, as the fella says. It looked nasty because he came down hard, but then you can see he got a right kick in after the horse had passed him. But, you see that all the time, you probably didn't think too much of it, but then it came to light that he'd actually been taken to hospital. I wouldn't say he was in intensive care, but he wasn't far off it. He was obviously quite serious, because whenever there's spinal neck injuries, clearly they take all the precaution that you would expect, and then there's kind of fears for his future kind of, life, let alone riding again. It does seem like on that side of things he's made, probably a quicker recovery than they expected, so he is, in a neck brace, and he's clearly going to be out of riding for a while, but I don't think it's any kind of crazily life-changing injury or anything. If we're looking ahead for the next week or 2 of racing, is that clearly he had some big rides left. First of which being John Bon in the Celebration Chase at Sandown tomorrow, a horse that, for all the stick he gets, Nico, he does get on very well with John Bon, and he's the only jockey to be able to have won on him. So, that's a big miss for Henderson. Mark Walsh comes in for the ride, which clearly, after the sort of Cheltenham and Aintree had, is no bad deputy, but he's riding that for the first time, so that's a bit of an unknown. And then probably even bigger star is Constitution Hill, who was unfortunately fallen in his last 2 races. Already got injured. Nicky was saying, because we've all been waiting to hear, will he go to Punchestown and will he kind of miss it? And I've been a bit sceptical about it, to be honest, knowing what Nicky's like. But he said it basically all depended on the gallop today, the Friday, that Nico was going to ride, and he said if Nico says to me he's not 100%, if he says he's 98%, for example, I won't run him at Punchestown. Then obviously Nico gets injured, so I was thinking, well, that's going to scupper it, because he's got an absolute classic, free out there, if you like. But fair enough, he stuck James Bowen on, who is kind of his number 2 in the yard. And I was listening to a podcast earlier, and James got off him and said he was brilliant. So thankfully, Nicky's still committing to running at Punchestown. Whether that means James Bowen will be in the saddle on the actual race course, you would think so. It would seem strange to kind of swap him out for somebody else now. But yeah, it was kind of up in the air whether Constitution Hill would still run as a result of Nico not being available, but the vibes are positive, and he's going to school over the weekend, and if that goes well, a week today he'll be lining up in the Punchestown Champion Hurdle.
Fantastic. And how long is the festival for Punchestown? Is it a couple of days?
Oh, it goes on forever. I mean, I have been before a few years ago. It's one of
they
the
do a mix, don't they? Is it flat and jumps?
No, you're thinking of Galway.
Oh, it's Galway I'm thinking of.
Punchestown is just a jumps course. So, they do quite well in Ireland, really, because they've got the big Christmas period at Leopardstown, the Dublin Racing Festival. Then they culminate the season with Punchestown as kind of a festival. I suppose it's the equivalent to our Cheltenham, and we have Aintree as well, but we just have Sandown as one day, whereas they make a week of it, basically. I think it's something like Tuesday to Saturday. Could be Tuesday to Sunday. I mean, their festivals go on for so long. I mean, Galway's Monday to Sunday. So
we're selling some Guinness that weekend.
But honestly, it's a really, really good course. Not too far outside of Dublin.
Definitely one that we've got to take in.
Yeah. I was actually there. I think one of the biggest bets I'd had in recent years was we all piled onto State Man in the Grade 1 Novice Hurdle, because he just won the county on the bridle.
Was he on?
And he was
TV
11 to
running,
10.
Was he?
Yeah.
Was he? Cheers.
Punished them.
Just going back to what you were saying though about obviously Constitution Hill, and he did some schooling, and they did the assessment today. Obviously, Nico knows him like inside out, so he knows if he is at 100% how well he's doing. Obviously, does James even know what 100% is for Constitution Hill? I mean, to him, what could be 90% is probably the best he's ever ridden potentially.
Yeah.
So is he actually 100% or not? But I just wonder if that's how potentially if Nicky does. I really, really, really hope Nicky doesn't pull the plug on it, because it'd be great to see him go over there and try and regain some of the season that he's lost out on. But it'd just be very interesting as to what happens there, and if he does go, I just really, really hope they do. And if James gets the leg up, then fantastic.
Yeah, well, Nicky was actually interviewed directly on this podcast, so to be honest, I got the impression it was his view of how he worked as opposed to James giving him feedback. Yeah, I mean, obviously he would listen to that, but I think Nicky's watched him enough times at the Gallops to probably know what he should look like. So exactly. So yeah, hopefully in a week today we see the superstar back to his glory days.
I think the Irish would probably appreciate seeing that. A real kind of big old battle up front up the last, and just seeing hopefully Constitution Hill come back to his full form would be something special to see right at the end of the season as well.
Absolutely.
Superb. Okay, right. So the final piece, we've actually managed to get through this so far pretty damn sharpish. I know, exactly. Yeah, the racing idiot, as it were. So we've got you covered here, guys. So we've got the Sandown finale, as we've just said. So we're covering 4 races across the card. So the Grade 2s and the Grade 1s in there. So we're going to start off by looking at the 2 mile, 6.5 furlong, the Oaksey Chase, which is a Grade 2 on 225 at Sandown there. So, Elle, what's your thoughts towards on this?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you say at the start is that because there's such a tight battle at the top of the Trainers' Championship, it's made this card 10 times better than it can be when obviously the ground's quite quick, end of a long season, a lot of trainers have kind of pulled stumps, so you kind of get 4 or 5 runner races a lot of the time, which isn't the most compelling. But you've got this race here and there's 9 runners, which I can't remember the last time there was enough for each way betting, so that's great to see him. It does help when he's got most of the field in most of the races, but it presents an interesting sort of contest because you've got Gaelic Warrior, who kind of looked imperious when he won the Arkle and then sort of went missing this season, and then including missing Cheltenham in the end, but then roared back to life at Aintree when he was hanging out the back of the TV, and I thought, yeah, here we go, he's gone again, and then he just up in trip, he just surged clear. And he sort of turned out 3 weeks later. The ground probably is a bit quick for him, but he has always seemed to be better right-handed. And I was listening to Nick Luck's podcast yesterday, and Joe Chambers, who's the racer manager for the Richies, he actually kind of a throwaway comment just said, we've always been quite keen to run him at Sandown. Like he might have gone for a Tingle Creek back in the day, for example, because I think they think it will suit him. He doesn't seem to jump as sort of right as he used to, but I do think it probably suits him a bit better. And I mean, he is the absolute standout in class. My kind of concerns slightly are that he obviously has kind of gone missing the season. Time out at Aintree, the race sort of fell into his lap a little bit. I think they went very hard out in front, and he kind of picked up the pieces off the pace. This is a shorter trip. Clearly he's won an Arkle, so he's not exactly completely devoid of pace, and the ground is quick enough for him. But when I was trying to think, well, what would I tip against him, I was very close to putting up Pictori, but then I thought I could look very stupid if I did that. Obviously we had our differences when you tipped him at Ascot and he dotted up. But you would think Sandown and Ascot are quite similar, both right-handed, both kind of uphill finishes. But he's just always delivered at Ascot and maybe occasionally Kempton. He has been beaten at Sandown before, and he's a 10-year-old, and I'm thinking I couldn't give a prayer to anything else. No disrespect to the opposition. And at 5-4, I'm thinking if I had my last 20 quid, who would I trust to get it over the line? And I probably would go with Gaelic Warrior. If he was 4-6, 4-7, I'd be thinking no, I'd take him on. But at 5-4 with Bet365, I think that's generous enough. He's got the class. He's a 7-year-old. He could still be improving, so I'd fancy him to get the job done tomorrow. Yeah,
I think I'd agree with you. When I looked at him, I think it was yesterday, just after Dex came out, he was 2-1. I thought, okay, that's quite a juicy price.
Jesus, missed that.
I know. Next time I looked at him, he was 11-8, and I thought, blimey, they've hoovered that up as quick as you like. Like you say, I was kind of always go through the cards now of the race and just thinking what's going to beat the favourite, what is going to beat the favourite. And I looked at Picdory and exactly what you've said. He just seems to save his best for Ascot and doesn't seem to do it anywhere else. And he's a classy horse on his day, but like you said, the Gold Cup for him was his Ascot run that he went and won by country mile. And I think he's only run once at Sandown, but he finished third that day. Not that he can't do it, but has he got the class to be a tuned Gaelic warrior? I don't think so. He just always seems to be the bridesmaid and never the bride kind of thing at that kind of this kind of level. So yeah, I think you're right in terms of Gaelic. If he's on song, he should win quite classily. I did kind of look at Gentleman de Me.
So did I. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a look at it. I thought, because there's 9 runners and you've got an each way there. There was nothing outside of that I saw. Just thought because Gentleman de Me had won the Topham at Aintree last time out. It's a slight step up in trip, and he's got the hill to kind of deal with because obviously Aintree being very flat. Whether Sandown has got that the smaller version of the Cheltenham Hill type thing there, but I thought he may be able to kind of snatch on for a third or something like that, maybe even second if Picdory blows up. But I
think he's a good each way. For me, he's a filthy, what you call a filthy each way price.
It's dirt. It is dirt. But if you gave me the choice of like him finishing, at a place or having to bet win only on Picdory, which you have to do, I'm going to take Gentleman de Me hands down all day. Just because I don't see really Picdory winning it, in all honesty, and that's the only bet you can do, really.
Okay, sounds like we're in agreement then.
I think so. So the next race then we've got is the Select Hurdle, 3 o'clock. So this is 2 mile, 5 furlong. It's a grade 2. Elle, let's go with you again, mate. What are we going for?
Yeah, one thing I meant to mention earlier actually in the pod is when we're talking about the Trainers' Championship is ITV have basically forcibly completely rearranged this whole card, including bringing it half an hour earlier, which I think is really commendable by them. Obviously Sandown have had to kind of hot-foot it and accommodate their request. Clearly, imagine, right, we've just had the big race, the 365 Gold Cup, and then the Trainers' Championship's off the balance and ITV go off air, and it's like they've covered the whole season and they can't even cover the winner. So they brought the card forward, and then ITV are now actually showing the last 6 races. So basically every race but the first race. So if you've seen these race times in sort of entry stage or whatever, they've completely changed. But I think it's a good idea, and they've moved this race forward. I think this race was going to be the last race, and they've put the 365 Gold Cup to the second to last race, which is the most valuable. So kind of quite innovative by ITV to do that. So, yeah, this is as you say, a kind of grade 2 mid trip race.
Yeah,
I've actually thought I'm going to take on Mullins this time because I think it's going to be easy to get sucked into pretty much all of his favourites on tomorrow. This Kit's Ball is obviously kind of young, very unexposed, lightly raced, but he is an absolute nutcase, and I see they've put a hood on him for the first time tomorrow, which, to be fair, might make the difference. But I just vividly remember Paul Townend just kind of like trying to hold him back at Aintree last time out, and he was, okay, that was over 3 miles, but he was going like the wind in his hands. When a horse does that, they just give themselves no chance, no matter how good they are. If they can't harness that talent and they just rush it out of them in the first half of the race, they won't get home. And if he was kind of closer to 2-1, I might be prepared to take the risk, but he's kind of 6-4, 13-8, and you've got a horse against him in Lucky Place who I must admit I'm not a huge fan of, but in these conditions, good ground, the right trip, slightly more likely race than some of the other horses that will be coming in here, having missed Aintree and obviously raced at Cheltenham. He won the Rail Kill at Cheltenham, kind of looking pretty good earlier in the season, and because there's no 2.5 mile race at Cheltenham, they had to put him into the World Hurdle. Christ, that hasn't been called that for a while. The Stayers Hurdle.
Here we go.
Show my age, yeah.
Coming out here we go. The Mackesons coming out next, is it?
Which is over 3 miles, and to be fair, he was still in contention coming towards 2 out, and then the trip sort of did for him. So at 5-2, no Nico de Boyville to worry about. Get well soon, Nico. I think lucky place will do for me, mate.
Yeah, I'm again in agreement. I just worry with that Kitswell as well that can he see out the trip, because everything when I looked at the breeding just suggested 2 miles like is a max distance, and he's clearly won over 2 miles, but they're stepping up in trip, and I just don't think he's gonna do it. personally. So I agree. I think the race is quite it's not great in terms of like what else is there. In Lucky Place, I wasn't overly keen on, but out of the two, if you gave me the top two in the market, which I think it's between, I think Lucky Place at 5-2 is the way to play it. I don't think there's much else in there that's worth looking at really. So apologies to anyone else that owns those horses. But there we are.
We're aligned again. That's unusual.
I know. I was going to say this. I don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll find out tomorrow.
We'll win and die together, mate.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. We'll die on the sword. Hope for the best anyway. Okay, so then we move on to the 3:35, which is the celebration chase, which is just over pretty much 2 miles. Hell, let's go back. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm going to be brave or stupid here. We obviously mentioned previously that Nico is no longer available and that John Bon is a mercurial horse. I mean, he doesn't do a lot that makes you think he's a bit hard to control or anything like that, but he is just clearly taken some knowing. I did think it was interesting that one of the more memorable times that Nico wasn't around and James Bowen rode him at Cheltenham and got it. I mean, I feel a bit sorry for him, but everyone threw pebbles at him. He got it all wrong, and he got beaten by quite an inferior horse. So he's riding for Nicky in the previous race, but he's not getting the leg up in this one, which is probably telling. But obviously, Mark Walsh is no bad jockey. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just thinking he's 8-15 / 1-2. Is there any chinks in his armour? If Nico was on him, probably not. But because it's got a different jockey on, what if that just unsettles him enough that he gets into a bad rhythm, he makes a mistake, and then, there's some decent horses in here. The next one you obviously come to is an Ergamin who, dual champion chase winner. He's got a great CV, but he's 11. He had a pleasing comeback when he got done by Banbridge. Was it Banbridge? And then it must have been Cheltenham he went to next, and he kind of disappointed. So he's always been a horse that wants soft ground, so I'd be a bit worried about him. The rest, I'm like, there's not a lot in there to help you. And the only one that could improve, and I'm seeing he's actually been clipped in as I'm looking at it now. So I wrote down 32, he's 6-1 now, is Ilete Tom. Again, he's a horse that I've never been a big fan of, mostly because whenever I back him, he doesn't win. But I've always backed him I was always back him at Cheltenham because he'd have the form in Ireland, and he'd always be kind of a bigger price than some of the other Willie Mullins horses. But he actually doesn't seem to like Cheltenham, but he's got a great record in other places. And you're just taking a flyer that if there are any chinks in John Bon's armour with a different jockey, that who's the only horse that could give him a race? And I think, now obviously one thing to say is he's been off for a year because he last raced at the Punchestown Festival. But he won the Grade 1 novice there over 2 miles. And I would never worry about Willie having a horse fit. I mean, his gallops at home are so hard work for the horses that they get them fitter than pretty much anyone. So, and I was thinking, given that he won at Punchestown last year, surely he could have had him tuned up for, the Punchestown Champion Chase, essentially. The fact that he's brought him over here, he wouldn't be doing that if he was half fit. So, Elated Toms to try and down the legendary John Bon, who I do like a lot.
Again, I think we're very aligned. John Bon at 8-15, like I say, he's done it last year. But like you say, the fact that Nico's obviously injured, Mark Walsh takes the ride. Like, is there something? He is, like you said, we've seen him at Cheltenham last time out. I know there's obviously this enigma that he hates Cheltenham, but he obviously made a blundering error during the champion chase this year. And that was with Nico on board, and you just think, what's another jockey going to be like? He'll either get on really well with Mark, or it could go very Pete Tong. And like you say, 8-15, I wouldn't put up a horse at 8-15 to back. I wouldn't back it myself at 8-15. And again, I came down on the same side as you. I just thought an Ergamin will want softer ground, which he's not going to get. Although I was watching the Sandown, the flat earlier on. I know it's obviously not the same track that they're running on, but the ground was apparently good to soft but dead. So
they chucked so much water on, like so much.
That's the trouble, and it'd be interesting to see. I still don't think it will be in Ergamin's favour. And like you say, he's an 11-year-old now. He's really kind of reached his peak, and I think he's coming down the other side of his career, unfortunately. And I came down on the side of Ilete Tom as well, just because I thought, even though he's been off a year, Willie is the master. Like, he will just get horses ready, and it doesn't bother me that he's been off the track for a year. And like I said, because he's now going for this trainer's title, and he could have sent him to Punchestown, as you say. If he wants this badly enough, Iletiton could be very, very fit and ready to go. Even if he picks up the second place, because there's only 2 places available. I still think it's a decent bet from what's in there. So yeah, Iletiton as well.
I think we should say at this point is that I genuinely hadn't seen your tips before we came
I
on.
know, yeah, I was going to say, I was actually going to add in.
I thought you were going to give me pelters for that one.
Yeah, exactly. But I was on the train into London yesterday, and I was like, right, I need to spend some time doing this, and I was just going through the cards and I was picking them out and wrote up some load of notes on it. But yeah, no, I've put them on, and you literally just came on, and you hadn't seen any of it. So yeah, it's we're just well aligned.
Stars have aligned.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, we've gone slightly a little bit rogue. I think we was on the same kind of page a little bit on the last race which we're covering, which is obviously the Bet365 Gold Cup Handicap Chase, which is over 3 miles, 4.5. But we have kind of gone slightly more away from each other, I guess. But I mean, I'll kind of give you a little breather before you go in for it. I've kind of looked at this again. I mean, Willie Mullins is covering half the field. You've got 20 runners in this, and Willie Mullins has 10 of them. I mean, it's ridiculous. If he wins this, which potentially he might well do.
He's going to win it, isn't he?
I mean, it'd be ridiculous if he doesn't. It's just which horse is going to win is the question. I've said whatever Paul Townend normally rides in this thing, he normally gets it pretty spot on as to what's the right call here. I mean, he's got on High Class Hero. The horse was, I think, when I looked yesterday, he was like 6-1 or something. He's now into 4-1. So he's clearly been backed. He carries a nice low weight. My only kind of concern was the trip, but because he's pretty unexposed, he could do well. It's not my pick. I've come towards, and I always love the stat of looking at horses who've run in the race before, won the race before, so I've come down on a couple. So I've gone with Manila Kakuna. It's my first pick, having won the race last year. Yes, he was £4. He's £4 higher this time, but he ran in the Grand National, which is a slight concern. It's coming around 3 weeks after. That's obviously a marathon trip, which he did finish off. I think he finished 7th in that. I mean, he made a bit of a blunder, I think 2 out, which kind of ruined any chance of potentially winning it. But he ran, obviously, in last year's version of this race, he beat Nick Rocket, and Nick Rocket obviously went on to win the Grand National this year. So that's quite a nice little form line in there. Grange Clare West is the other one that ran in the Grand National, which running in this as well. Now, Grange Clare West is carrying top weight in this, 12 stone. He's running off a mark of 158. And I just wonder whether Willie's thrown this one in here to kind of keep the weight off some of his other horses, because I looked at the stats yesterday for this, and I think 18 of the last 23 winners of this have carried 11 stone or less. Now, Manila Kakuna doesn't quite fit into that stat. I think he's running off 11 stone 1, maybe slightly higher. But Grange Clare West being put in there for that, it brings his weight down quite considerably from where it could have been had he not been in. So I think that's a potential. It just really depends on the Grand National and how he's come out from that. So Manila Kakuna is the first pick. And the last one that I've gone for is Transmission. So last time we saw, he didn't go to Aintree. He ran in the National Hunt Cup at Cheltenham over the 3 miles, 6 furlongs, so a marathon trip. He finished 6th that day, but I just really feel he had Patrick Mullins on board on that, and Patrick had ridden him a few times before that in the build up to the race, and he got it spot on. But I just feel like he rode him too far off the pace at the back, and he was coming towards the end, but it was just too little too late. And I feel that Patrick's not on board this time. He's got, I think, Conor O'Farrell is on board, and if they look at that and they rechange the tactics and maybe ride him a little bit more prominently, it doesn't have to be right up there, but just a little bit closer to the pace. I'm hoping that he'll he can kind of find a place, if not win it. Especially because he's carrying bottom weight. He's got 10 stone 2 on his back, so he's not out the handicap. He's just carrying bottom weight in there, which is obviously fantastic. And then the form from the National Hunt Cup was won by Haiti Couleur. And Haiti Couleur, that form has been franked because Haiti Couleur has now come out last weekend and won the Irish Grand National. So, pretty decent form line. So I just think Transmission potentially could be one. I think, I don't know if you've got the prices up at the moment, but he was 14-1 yesterday, so I don't want to misquote.
14. Yeah.
Just at 14. So yeah, 14-1. I think that's a cracking bet each way. But then, El, what's your thoughts? Let's see if we do align on these.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Willie's got half the field, and a lot of these are turning up very quickly, either from the Scottish National or the Grand National. So you've got to bear that in mind, that he is throwing darts at the board that otherwise probably wouldn't be turning up in races like this, so close together. And so to that end, you could probably rule quite a few out. I tend to prefer horses, especially over a marathon trip, which this is, 3.5 miles. You want horses that are a bit fresher, generally speaking. So, I mean, for me, that kind of rules out a lot of the top of the market. The obviously alternative to that, also the one that hasn't sort of ran that recently, is High Class Hero. Now, I know he's the favourite, and he isn't proven at the distance, but then so few horses are when you're talking about extreme trips. But he was quite a classy novice hurdler. He was second, beaten half a length in the Grade 1 novice hurdle at Punchestown Festival last season, and has obviously gone chasing this season. One of the things I do like in big handicaps is backing novices, because they get a handicap mark for the first time, and the handicapper could be miles off. And that was kind of proven, although I don't think he was technically a novice. It was his handicap debut when I tipped up Captain Cody to win the Scottish Grand National, because he was given a mark of 140, and I'm thinking, for a Willie Mullins chaser, that could be thrown in, and so it proved. Now this was, I think I wish he'd gotten 140, because High Class Hero is 148, which I think is probably high enough based on what he's achieved over fences. But I'm just going with the angle of he's fresh, he's trained by Willie Mullins, town ends on him, and it's his handicap debut over fences, and if he stays, I could just see him being too good. Yeah. The likes of Dancer City, Grange Cray West, Malika Kuna, and some of the others obviously ran in the big races, the two big nationals essentially, in the last few weeks. I feel like some of them might be able to continue to hold their form, but others will just completely bomb out. So he would be my main fancy. I know he's the favourite, but at 4-1, I'm thinking there's not a lot else at the top of the market I fancy. I do really like Transmission, that you've obviously given a good word for. I completely echo that. And I think of the British horses, he's probably the most likely to get in the frame. So at 14-1, a nice each way bet. He will probably be ridden a bit far back to make you a bit nervous, but if they do ride him more prominently, as you said, I think he could be in the money. And then another one of Willie's that I probably like, I did actually mention him for the Scottish National when we did our preview of that a couple of weeks ago, which kind of seemingly goes against what I've just said. Is Spanish Harlem, trusting his Sam Twist and Davis is riding. And the reason why I don't think that the time between the races is going to inconvenience him is because he was actually carried out at around about halfway. So clearly he hadn't gone into the sort of teeth of the race, wouldn't have had a hard race. He's an interesting horse. He's quite unexposed as a 7-year-old, but he's carrying 10 stone 2, which, as you said, kind of lighter weights tend to do quite well in this race. And I did fancy him for that. So if I fancied him for that and he was like 9-1, and he's 20, and just because he got carried out, which wasn't even his fault, he's now 20-1 tomorrow. I'm thinking it's got to be worth an each way bet, 20s. So Spanish Harlem is my each way sneaky.
Fantastic, I love that. Okay, guys, I think we've come to the end in record time. So we're really looking forward to the racing tomorrow. Fingers crossed. We managed to back a couple of winners there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you've got any questions you'd like us to answer, please do send them through. That will be to tailedoffpod@gmail.com. Tell us what you're liking about this. If you're not liking certain things, we're more than happy to kind of take any criticism or any likes. We always enjoy that kind of stuff. So be sure to follow us on Instagram, tailedoffpod, on X as well. I think we're still on there, tailedoffpod again. And you can watch this on YouTube or listen in on Apple and Spotify. So until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll keep you up to date with everything that we get on. Fingers crossed we'll have some stuff on the socials tomorrow. But until next time, have fun out there, race hard, and try not to be tailed off. Thanks very much, Al, as well, for joining.
Position. Any power at the last race down. Any power of Scotland in front of the last left. Melody
Right the first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Loughlin, and Hoyt Floyd.
From Archibald, Hardy Eustace, defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then he's followed up right by, he's beginning to come. He's drifting off the true line, he hits fire, and this was to be home. Shooting the gun, win his fourth Betfair chase.